Resourceful Designer, episode 132. Design is an investment, not an expense.
Welcome to the Resourceful Designer podcast, offering solutions to streamline your graphic and web design business so you can get back to designing. And now, your host. His nickname in grade school was Beanpole because he was tall and skinny. Mark Dickhout.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy that you've tuned in this week to listen to this episode about design being an investment, not an expense. In this week's episode, I'm going to share a resource that helped one of my clients get out of a jam this week, and it actually made them appreciate me more in the process. Then I'll discuss this week's topic, covering the mentality of design when it comes to clients and how a small shift in your presentation can make a world of difference, before ending the episode with a great question from Ursula about speeding up proposals. Now, normally at this time of the podcast, I'll give you a little brief update on what I've been up to, but I haven't really been up to anything this week. Technically, I'm on holidays this week. My wife and I did not plan any sort of trips or any place to go other than a few day trips, so I'm taking some time out of my week to record this podcast, but I'm not really doing any design work. Or maybe I shouldn't say not. I did touch up a few things. A client got back to me with a proof that I had sent out to them on a podcast artwork, and I decided last night I took some time and I just touched that up. I made the few little changes they requested and sent it back to them. But otherwise, I'm not really designing this week. So that's what I've been up to. And since it's not too much, might as well just move on to the resource of the week. And this week's resource, as I mentioned in the intro, is one that actually helped me out this week. Actually, that is another thing I did this week. I did have a client call up while I was at home. They called me and they were in a big panic because he was doing some updates to his website and he did something and the page he was working on disappeared, or not necessarily disappeared. The page was there, but there was nothing on it. It was a blank page. But luckily, I had Backup Buddy installed on that website. And it was a matter while I was on the phone with him, I logged into his website, went in, checked the page. Sure enough, there was nothing there. I don't know what he did. I didn't have to question him what he did. I just went in through the Backup Buddy and I said, restore that page. And while he was still on the phone with me, telling me what he was planning and what sort of changes he was trying to make to the page and that, before his conversation was done, I let him know that the page was back up and running and he can keep going. So it was that easy to do with Backup Buddy. It took me less than a minute to restore that page for him. And he was so grateful. He said that's why that they're spending the money to invest in my services as a hosting company for their website and, of course, designing the website initially. Now they're doing their own updates. But he said that's the reason why they hired me in the first place, was because of the service that I provide. So Backup Buddy is this week's resource of the week, and it's available from iThemes. You can get to it by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/backupbuddy. And Backup Buddy, it's the easiest way to backup, restore, migrate, and relocate a WordPress website. With Backup Buddy, you always have the peace of mind knowing that your website is safe. And if ever the need arises, it can easily be restored with just a few simple clicks, just like I did this week when that client called me up. Other great uses for Backup Buddy is if you design websites either locally on your local computer or in a designated sandbox, the way I do. I always design my websites on a server that I have or on a domain that I have put aside. I design all websites there, and whenever they're ready, then I can migrate it from there to its permanent home on its own domain. Another great thing to use Backup Buddy for is just the whole push-pull. If you design in a sandbox, you can, and I don't always. Some clients I have set up this way, some I don't. It depends on the website. But I can have a copy of the website on my server, and anytime they request changes, I make the changes on my server, and once I'm satisfied with the changes, I push them to the live site. So the live site is never down. I'm never compromising the live site. If anything breaks, it breaks on my end and it doesn't affect the live site. So a great thing to do with Backup Buddy. I have a couple of clients set up that way. I have a couple that are managing their own websites and I have them set up that way as well. So they make all their changes on one side, and once they look at it and they're satisfied that the changes are made, then they push them to their live site. So Backup Buddy is one of my favorite plugins for WordPress to install. It's the very first plugin I install on every website I build. I start a website, I install the Divi theme on it because I do all my websites in Divi. I install the Divi theme, and then the first plugin I install is Backup Buddy and get it configured. Because I know once it's set up and I got sync set up with iThemes and then set up the live backup, I know that I don't even have to tell it to back up. It just automatically, every time I make a change to the website, it automatically gets backed up. So if you are interested in learning more about Backup Buddy, visit resourcefuldesigner.com/backupbuddy. And now, design is an investment, not an expense. The way that a potential client views you comes down to your presentation and your proposal. There are a lot of different things to go into it, how they came across you, word of mouth referrals, your reputation. But really, how they view you comes down to the way you present to them and the proposals that you present them. If you present what you are offering, the services you offer, as an expense for the client, they will judge you on the final price of whatever it is you're presenting them. However, if you can present what you are offering as an investment in your services and in the product that they will get from you, then the client will judge you on the merit of those services that you are providing them and not just on the price. This is one of the key factors holding many designers back from charging what they're truly worth. You hear it on podcasts, in YouTube videos, in articles, in books, that designers should be charging more. Most designers are not being paid what they're truly worth. I wrote an article a while back called "It's Time to Raise Your Design Rates." And you can get to that article by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com, raise your rates. And the whole point of that is that designers are not being paid what they're truly worth. And that could come down just to the way you are presenting to your clients, whether you're presenting an expense versus an investment. Now, one of the biggest concerns I hear over raising your design rates is that clients will simply get their design work done somewhere else for less money. And this could be true, but this only applies to clients who view design as an expense. For those who view it as an investment, price usually isn't a major issue. So how do you change a client's mindset? Well, the easiest way to do it is to change the way you present what it is you're offering to those clients. And if you do, it could make a huge difference in your proposal success rate. It all comes down to semantics. If you tell a client that their new logo will cost them $1,200 or their new website will cost them $8,000, in their mind, they're hearing the price and they're imagining it as an expense, something that they need to justify. This is money they have to spend and they have to make sure they're getting the best deal. This may cause them to shop around to other designers. However, if you explain to a client what it is they're receiving from you and what they can get in return from it, then tell them that in order to get all of that, they need to invest $1,200 or invest $8,000. Now the client is thinking about the return that that money will bring them. And when they're thinking along those lines, they're much more inclined to sign the deal with you. See, the whole trick is to go beyond the receivables that you're giving the client, the actual logo, the actual website, the brochure you're designing, the car wrap, the billboard, the trade show booth. You have to go beyond the receivables, what you are actually giving the client, and explain to them what they can accomplish with those receivables. With the new logo that you're going to design, they're going to get better exposure, better brand recognition, and stand out amongst their competition. The new brochure that you're going to design for them will give them better reach and better impact, and it'll create more interest in their product, their service, their organization, whatever. It'll create more interest for those who see it. For their website, it'll produce more traffic, which could in turn produce more conversions, which means better sales, better income, better revenue. If you explain all these things beyond the physical product, beyond the logo, beyond the brochure design, beyond the website build, when you can explain what the client gets beyond those designs, they are much more inclined to appreciate what it is you are offering them, and they are much more willing to invest in you. They're not investing in the design or everything solely. They're investing in you as well. You see, investing is something people want to do, whereas an expense is something people hope to avoid. And that's the difference. If you can convince your clients that you're offering the first one, that you're offering something to invest in, then there's a good chance that you end up getting that project. But if all you're offering is a final product, a final design, and they view it as an expense, then they're going to shop around to get the best price they can. And some clients, there's nothing you're going to be able to do about it. That will be their mindset. And if your prices are too high, you're not going to land them as a client. But maybe you don't want them as a client. You want the clients that are willing to invest in you, in the design, in their business. Do you remember in past episodes how I've always discussed client relationships and how important they are? Building the relationship with your client is the foundation, the key to your design business. The whole point is to be viewed as a strategic partner with them. You're not working for them. You're not an employee. You're not a supplier to them. You're a strategic partner to help them grow. Well, clients are much more willing to invest in a partner because they feel like they're getting something out of it beyond just what the partner is bringing. There's more to it, so they're willing to invest more. If you're just viewed as a supplier of design, well, then the client will only see you as an expense, something they have to pay out, and you will never be able to get the rates, the prices that you deserve to be charging. Now, what happens if you talk to your client, you explain the investment, you explain beyond the design what it is they're getting, that it's not just a website you're getting, but everything the website can do for you. It's not just a logo you're getting, but everything the logo can accomplish for you. If you explain all of that and the client still questions the price and they're wondering, well, why is it so expensive? What, somebody else can do it cheaper. Whenever this happens, I usually try to explain it in terms that they may understand better, more on the business side, stuff they're used to dealing with. Sometimes I'll look at their store. If it's a physical location, they have a storefront, and maybe their storefront is in a shopping mall or it's a downtown street. And I'll ask them, well, why did you choose that location for your storefront? And they'll tell me, well, it's a great location and a lot of foot traffic, a lot of exposure and stuff like that. And then you could say, yeah, but you could have leased or purchased a much cheaper spot on the outskirts of town that would have given you more floor space and would have been a beautiful looking place. Why didn't you go that route? Well, it's because of the investment. They were willing to invest more, pay more for that downtown location, for that shopping center location, because they knew it would help their business out. They were willing to invest. Yes, it is an expense, but they're willing to invest. Or if it's a service-based business, maybe it's something like a plumber or an electrician or a tree cutting service, whatever. And you can ask them, well, why are you driving a new model or a newer model truck for your service business? You see them driving around with this brand new or one that's only 2 or 3 years old, maybe a nice Dodge Ram truck or something like that. And you ask them, well, couldn't you do the exact same work in an old 2003 Chevy Silverado or something? Wouldn't they work just as well for you? And again, they will probably say, well, an old truck will make them look old. They wanted something that looks good, that's impressive for when people see them. See, they understand those sort of investments. Yes, you could argue that mortgages and leases, they are expenses. In accounting terms, that's exactly what they are. But they are an investment when it comes to the success of the business. Have you ever heard the term location, location, location? That applies to businesses as well as homes, as well as everything. Sometimes it's worth paying a lot more for a better location for your business because of the return on that money. You're paying more, but the investment is worth it. The same thing with the trucks or vehicles or whatever. Maybe it's a company that's wearing uniform. They have all their staff wears a uniform, a nice shirt with the name embroidered. Well, why do they do that? I mean, people can just as easily wear jeans and a t-shirt. No, they're creating a look. They're investing in their business that way. Well, the same applies to design. And you need to try to get that idea across to them that their logo, their website, their brochure, their vehicle wrap, whatever it is that they're designing or you're designing for them should be viewed in the same sense as those other things. They are an investment. Because yes, clients can get websites, they can get logos, they can get marketing material and all that stuff done for cheaper. There will always be somebody willing to do it for less money than you're charging, regardless of what your rates are. But if the client truly wants what's best for their business, they should be willing to invest a little bit more in order to get something that will impact their business beyond just those designs that they're ordering. That's one of the arguments you could use for things like 99 Designs or for Fiverr. I can go get a logo done on Fiverr. Yes, you can. But do you want to invest $5, $10 in your business? Or do you want to invest on somebody that's actually going to take an interest in your business, get to know your business, learn about you, learn about your competition, learn about what it takes to succeed in whatever industry or niche that client is in before coming up with the right design for them? That's where the investment comes in. And that's where you come in. I remember a quote by Michael Hyatt. He's not a designer, but I've read a couple of his books. I really like his whole mentality on selling and presenting and just getting your message out there. And I remember a quote that he had in one of his books that says, if your designs seem cheap, dated, or confusing, clients will think your business is cheap, dated, or confusing. And no business can afford that. So if you are not already doing it, you need to change the way you present yourself to clients. Stop telling them how much things will cost. Instead, tell them how much they need to invest in order to get them. You can even change the wording on your proposals and on your invoice, on your statements and all that stuff. Instead of saying total cost or total price, change it to read total investment. It's a very subtle shift. But if it clicks with a potential client, if they can all of a sudden see that what they're paying you for is actually an investment in their business, then they are much more willing to spend the extra money, and that client will become loyal to you for a very long time. So spread the word. The design is an investment, not an expense. Now, I would love to know your thoughts on this topic. Do your clients know that they are investing in you whenever they hire you? Please let me know by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 132 and leaving a comment for this episode. I don't get a lot of comments for my podcast episodes, and it's something I'd like to get more of. I mean, I know most of you are listening on the go. You're not on the website, but I would love to get more comments on these just to hear from people what they thought. If they agree with me, if they disagree, if there is more to it that I'm not saying. So if you have any thoughts on this topic, on design being an investment and not an expense, please leave a comment. resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 132. And now, this week's question of the week. And this week's question comes in from Ursula. And she wrote, how do you approach project proposals? I feel like I spend a lot of time and energy on proposals, and I'm always wondering how much of them I could have prepared ahead of time to make the process faster for my potential clients and cost-effective for me in terms of my time. But I feel like I should be approaching each project with a clean slate so that my proposal is individualized for them. There must be a better way. Can you share your process or other best practices in this area? Well, thank you for the question, Ursula. And this is a great question. I was talking in this episode about proposals and the whole fact that you should be telling your client that your proposal is an investment. Whatever it is you're doing for them, it should be viewed as an investment and not an expense. But when it comes to proposals, what I do is I do have a key, call it a template that I use for my proposals. I also have the same thing for my contract. But what the proposal is, and I have multiple proposals. So I have a proposal for a logo, I have a proposal for a website, and I have a proposal for just general graphic design, depending on what it is, whether it's stationery, business card letterheads, or a brochure or a trade show booth. And that I kind of bulk all those. I have that. So I have 3 different templates: logo design, general design, and website design. And the way mine work is I have it, I work in Quark Express. So I actually have my proposal as a Quark Express document. And I have certain areas in the proposal, I highlight them magenta so they stand out. So anything that is black, I know I don't have to touch. It's the stuff that stays the same regardless of what client it is. It's the same in every single proposal. So I don't have to worry about it. And that'll be things like, what are the responsibilities of the client? What are my responsibilities? How payments are received or handled? How copyright and ownership of the designs is transferred to the client once the job is finished, and all that stuff that is the same for every single job. I leave that in black. It doesn't have to be touched. Everything I have in magenta in my template is stuff that I have to alter and change. Sometimes it could be an entire paragraph and there'd be one word just where I have to name the client or name the project. If I'm talking about a brochure as opposed to a postcard, well, I'll have that one little section in magenta, and I know that I have to go write in whatever the design is, whether I'm doing a trade show booth or I'm doing a postcard or I'm doing a stationery pack or whatever. And I'll write that in. And once I write it, then of course I color it black. And that makes it really easy for me because I can look through my proposal. And depending on the proposal, if it's a website, website proposals are longer. I think mine's about 4 pages long. A logo one is shorter, and then the design one, depending on what there is involved, it could fluctuate page length. But it's easy for me to flip through the pages and see where I have to change things, where I have to put in the client name, where I have to talk about the price because the price is going to change. So to me, that's the easiest way that I work. I have these templates, and I actually have them saved as a Quark template. So when I open it up, when I go to save, it automatically asks me to save it as something else. I can't just save over it by accident. And I do this for every client, and that's what works best for me. Now, I don't know. There might be some other things out there. I've heard some people talk about websites that help with proposals. I'm not sure if some software, I don't know if something like FreshBooks, if that's what you're using. I don't use FreshBooks, but I think FreshBooks might offer proposals. I'm not 100% sure on that. And there's some other websites out there that I know offer proposal services. But I've found over the years, the easiest thing for me is those templates. I have 3 templates. Every time I have a job, somebody comes in and they need a proposal done up. All I do is open it up. I look at the magenta and I change it. And those sections are enough. You said in your question, Ursula, that you want to individualize them for the client. Those sections are enough to individualize them. I just have to worry about those couple of paragraphs where I talk about the project, I talk about the client, I talk about what we discussed during our meeting or our conversation or whatever. And then I go in and I name the clients and I change up whatever I need to. The other stuff, it doesn't have to be individualized. The copyright ownership transfer stuff, that information is the same for everybody. My payment terms is the same for everybody. It doesn't have to be individualized. So I don't have to go through the entire proposal every time. I only have to look at those couple of paragraphs that are magenta. So it makes it really fast for me to do it. And I only have to personalize those sections enough for the client to think that I'm talking directly to them. And that has worked for me for going back, well, since I started my business. And yes, I have tweaked them over the years as things change. I'll go in and every once in a while, I'll reread the entire thing just to make sure that I'm on par with everything. And every once in a while, one of the black sections that I don't normally change, I will go in and make a little addendum here or there and that sort of thing. So I find that's the easiest way that lets me complete a proposal in the shortest amount of time so I can get back to my current projects that I'm working on, get back to working the stuff that actually earns me money, because you don't really make money on writing a proposal. So I try to get through them as quick as possible. And this process has worked for me. I can get in and sometimes it'll take me 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and I can complete a proposal. Once I've figured out all the stuff, I just complete those paragraphs, color them all black, and then create a PDF and send it off to the client or print it off if I'm going to present in person. I always like, if I'm going to present in person, I like to hand it a printed copy. So that's my method. Now, as I mentioned, there are probably other ways out there. Some websites or maybe some other designers have some ideas that I'm not using. I'm just telling you what I do. And if anybody out there, if you have a different idea for making proposals and that sort of thing that you might want to share with Ursula, you can also leave a comment in the show notes for this episode at resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 132. Because just because I do it a certain way might not necessarily be the best way. So if you share it there, maybe you'll teach me something and maybe I'll change the way I do my proposals. But as I mentioned, that's the way I've been doing it, and it's been working for me. So thank you very much for your question, Ursula. I do appreciate it. And if you have a question you would like me to answer on a future episode of the podcast, please visit resourcefuldesigner.com/feedback and submit your question, and I will try to answer it on a future episode. Now, I received another great 5-star review on iTunes this week, and this one was in the US and came in from D. Downham. Says, extremely helpful. Mark truly knows how to guide fledgling designers down the right road to getting themselves started. Truly appreciate the awesome advice on this podcast. Well, thank you very much for that review. I love getting these things in. And reviews are great for when people discover the podcast. If they're going through iTunes and they come across Resourceful Designer, a lot of times people will look at the reviews to see what they say. And these sort of things will help people decide whether or not they want to listen to Resourceful Designer. And when they see all these great 5-star reviews, it just gives them much more incentive to press play or download or subscribe. Which reminds me, if you're not already subscribed to the podcast, if you're just listening on the website or whatever, it is so easy to subscribe. And that way you never miss an episode. You can either download the Resourceful Designer app through the Apple App Store or the Android App Store and get the actual app on your phone that'll allow you to listen to the episode. And what's great about the app is you can actually favorite. You put a star next to certain episodes that you really like, and it'll remember those so that if you want to go back and listen to them again in the future, you can. Now, if you don't want to download the app, you can listen via Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play Music, those things, or whatever your podcast player that you use, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or whatever. And you could subscribe through those. And then you always, as soon as a new episode comes out, it'll get downloaded to your device. So it's the easiest way to never miss an episode is to subscribe to the podcast. So I want to thank everybody who has, the thousands of people that tune in every week to listen to Resourceful Designer. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. Now, before I go, I also just want to thank everybody who is supporting the show on Patreon. Everyone who has decided that they like what I'm doing, they're getting value, they're being entertained, they're learning things from me, and have decided to pay me back a little bit with some support through Patreon. Every dollar helps cover the expenses for this show because I don't make money on Resourceful Designer at all. I do this because I love design and I love helping other people. So if you would like to support Resourceful Designer, even for as little as $1 a month, less than a cup of coffee, you can do so by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/Patreon, that's Patreon, and becoming a supporter. And those of you that are Patreon supporters right now, keep an eye out. I've got some ideas planned for what to do exclusively for Patreon supporters. So that'll be coming your way before the end of the summer. But that's it for this week's episode. I want to thank you once again for tuning in. I always appreciate you taking the time out of your busy week to listen to what I have to say and learn about our graphic design businesses. Until next episode, I am Mark DeCote, wishing you all the best in your business and reminding you to stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Resourceful Designer podcast at resourcefuldesigner.com.